Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons. We're trying to take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do for us is amazing. Definitely consider becoming a Patreon supporter. The link is in the description, as well as a link to Critical Failures, where we join a live stream game every Wednesday. Check us out. Comes on about 9:30 Eastern time, and the link is also in the description. With all that out of the way, we're going to talk about the Storm Herald Barbarian. The Storm Herald Barbarian comes to us from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This is unique of a barbarian subclass because it requires use of your bonus action on every turn. So depending on what kind of things you're trying to do with this character, you have to be aware of that. So Polar Master really won't be as useful once you're raging as opposed to when you're not, depending on what you're trying to do here. Now, you're not constantly in a rage through most of the game. You kind of have to pick and choose when you want to rage, which is an important decision that you kind of have to juggle with the Barbarian. If you're in a campaign that you happen to have a lot of fights in sequence, you don't want to burn through all your rages before you hit the boss. You want to make sure to save some of them. But then again, you do want to use it because it's fun. So you got to really juggle that depending on your situation and depending on the circumstances of the enemies you're fighting. If you're fighting a large group of enemies that are really easily killed, probably don't want to rage then. Definitely let your AoE people handle that. Your mages, your casters, let them blow everything away quickly. That way you don't have to worry too much about anything else. But with this, when you do rage, your bonus action is consumable every round, and it produces different effects. So that's something you really need to take time and think through. This is a character you want to build, and as you make the character, don't just think I'm going to pick this subclass because it looks cool. Try and figure it out further down the line. Really gauge the campaign you're in and kind of put everything together that way, because it's kind of going to be a little bit campaign dependent, because you might be going to certain areas, in which case certain of the abilities you really wouldn't be as beneficial as some of the other ones. Storm Aura. When you select this path at 3rd level, you emanate a stormy magical aura while you rage. The aura extends 10 feet from you in every direction, but not through total cover. Your aura has an effect that activates when you enter your rage, and you can activate the effect again on each of your turns as a bonus action. Choose desert, sea, or tundra. Your aura's effect depends on that chosen environment. As detailed below, you can change your environment choice whenever you gain a level in this class. If your aura's effect requires a saving throw, the DC equals 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your constitution modifier. Desert. When this effect is activated, all other creatures in your aura take 2 fire damage each. The damage increases when you reach certain levels in this class, increasing to 3 at 5th, 4 at 10th, and 5 at 15th level, and 16th at 20th level. C. When this effect is activated, you can choose one creature you can see in your aura. The target must make dexterity saving throw, and the target will take 1d6 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. The damage increases when you reach certain levels in this class, increasing to 2d6 at 10th level, 3d6 at 15th, and 4d6 at 20th. And then finally, Tundra. While this effect is activated, each creature of your choice in your aura gains 2 temporary hit points as icy spirits inure it to suffering. The temporary hit points increase when you reach certain levels in this class, increasing to 3 at 5th level, 4 at 10th level, and 5 at 15th, and then finally 6 at 20th. Now, in regards to these abilities, these bonus actions would happen every turn as your bonus action. So you can choose not to make these effects. So depending on where you are and what you're doing would kind of depict what's basically going to happen. Personally, I happen to like C the best because I like the idea of being kind of so enraged that lightning arcs through my body. I like that. I like this feeling that maybe everything gets kind of dark around me because the lightning pulsating is so bright. It augments, kind of like it distorts your vision. And I like that feeling. I feel like you can make a lot of cool characters like this. It kind of screams like a pirate as soon as you throw the sea in there, which can be very, very cool and exciting. You know, you're an adventurer. You're out on the seas constantly, and your gift is that you're so enraged that you've kind of connected to that elemental chaos that is the sea, and that reflects in your abilities. I think that's cool, but they do all have their different benefits. Now, desert obviously is a more tricky one to use because it hits everything. You don't choose, everything gets hit. Now, a lot of the times people see that 2 fire damage and are just woefully underwhelmed. But at 3rd level, 2 fire damage guarantees that whatever you actually have to hit will die in the next turn, or it's at least like a little bit lower, or kind of like a third of their hit points anyway. Like everything has like 7-8 HP at that point, unless it's a boss or you're only fighting 1 or 2 enemies. But a bunch of situations where you run up and there's a bunch of goblins, yeah, this is going to take out half their HP when it goes off. So even if somebody rolls low on damage, whatever they hit is going to die. It is important to note the barbarian does not have anything to hit wide groups. Everything it does is tunnels. So with desert, it gives you an opportunity that if you're going to be fighting a bunch of enemies, you can gradually do some additional damage. Plus, what if you miss all of your attacks? And what if you happen to dodge all the attacks aimed at you? Your rage ends. This will guarantee that it won't. Because there's no save on this, you're guaranteed to do this damage. I know, I get it, 2 damage is not a lot. At 5th level, 3 damage is not a lot. But 3 damage on top of your damage onto an AoE area is. You hit 4 people, which is not surprising because you're a barbarian and you charge and something is going to swarm you. You hit 4 people for 3 damage, you did 12 damage on top of whatever regular damage you did per round. Numerically, and actual on paper, the way it kind of works out, any extra damage you can deal helps. Sometimes there's that one enemy that you just don't get to till something else happens and you have to focus on other things. This will help whittle that character down so it's a little easier to take it. It's not a huge damage buff. It isn't. A barbarian, you get rage damage, you get brutal critical, you get reckless attack. All those things are focused on single target. This helps give you something additional to do in that kind of format. C, I think, is very easy, super easy to hit. It's just one person. So you can be surrounded by your party members, and it works beneficially that way. Now, with Tundra, it kind of falls to the same circumstance that Desert does, where it's like, it's such a small amount of temp HP, why would you want to keep putting this on? First off, you don't have many options as a barbarian to throw on temporary HP to yourself. When taking damage, it is after the reduced damage from your bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, if that's what you're getting hit with. So, if you got hit for 4, but you had 2 temporary HP, guess what? All you lost was 2 temporary HP. It's a damage reduction. That's what it is. Every turn you take 2 less damage from one attack. 3rd level, at 5th level it's 3, and I get it, the number isn't huge. 6 at 20th level is not a lot, but that's minus 6 from one attack that can help make your HP go a little further. It's dependent on what you're doing, and again, you can't really use Polearm Master with this subclass because when you're raging, it takes away that bonus action. At 6th level, you gain Storm Soul. The Storm grants you benefits even when your aura isn't active. The benefits are based on the environment you choose for your Storm aura. Desert, you gain resistance to fire damage, and you don't suffer the effects of extreme heat, as described in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Moreover, as an action, you can touch a flammable object that isn't being worn or carried by anyone else and set it on fire. C, you gain resistance to lightning damage, and you can breathe underwater. You also gain swimming speed of 30 feet. In Tundra, you gain resistance to cold damage, and you don't suffer the effects of extreme cold as described in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Moreover, as an action, you can touch water and turn a 5-foot cube of ice, a 5-foot cube of it into ice, which melts after a minute. This action fails if a creature is in the cube. So no freezing people to death, people. You can, however, put them underwater and then freeze a cube of ice above them and then keep freezing it, and then you can drown them. But you cannot freeze someone in ice. Just to be absolutely clear. This is a very interesting circumstance. Again, this kind of depicts the importance of the environment you're in. I know when I first looked at this subclass, my thought was, oh, I'll be a tiefling and I'll go desert because everything kind of works thematically that way. Like, I'm from the Nine Hells, hot, fire, brimstone, awesome, here we go. But then you get resistance to fire damage, and it feels lackluster because you already have resistance to fire damage if you're a tiefling. But if you're in an area where everybody does fire damage, it's more cohesive to have that resistance anyway. So maybe you picked something else, or maybe you did the new Tasha's character build where you took the themology behind the character and just gave him a different kind of feat and built your species like that. Then you would subtract that fire resistance and then pick it up here, which could be really beneficial and still kind of fit based on lore. But it is something you kind of have to gauge where you are and where you're going to be. Resistance to extreme heat is something that's very campaign dependent. Having it is great. Same thing with Tundra. I'm in Icewind Dale on Wednesday nights. And extreme cold is a serious issue. It can be problematic. It can very, very easily derail what you're doing and cause severe damage to your party. Being able to resist that, a big benefit. But you do need to understand that those are really campaign dependent. A resistance is also no matter where you pick it up, because the more resistances you have, the significantly better the benefit is for your longevity, especially if you're doing something where you're going to be up front. You will be caught with AoEs, you will be caught with single target spells, you will be caught with hits from elemental entities that have specific damage types. Like it all helps your longevity, especially with the barbarian. As important as it is to be able to just hit someone really, really hard, one of the most important features of the barbarian is the fact that it's so hard to take them down. The most common damage type in the game is slashing. It just is. It's a numbers thing. You have resistance to that every time you rage. The reason why that resistance is so important is because it's not enough just to run up and punch somebody for extra damage. Like it's great, don't get me wrong, and there's a million ways to do that to add on extra damage to your attack, but not everyone can sustain what a barbarian can sustain. And if you're fighting a lot of entities that are just there just to absorb damage, and one or two people in the back that can just lay you out with fire or magics and casters and things like that as enemies, your barbarians will drop pretty fast if they just got hit by spell after spell after spell after spell. But this is one of the few opportunities they have where they can gain resistance to the most common damage types. Fire is going to be the most common elemental damage you'll encounter. But if you're in a campaign where you're in an area where everything deals fire damage, desert might be absolutely worth it. But the trade-off is your other ability, your storm aura, isn't going to be as effective. So depending on where you are with the campaign and how far you intend to go, some of these choices might need to be changed. Sometimes the resistance might be more beneficial to you. But if you're in a situation where you're sea or you're tundra, it doesn't matter if you're in the cold. You're not dealing ice damage. You're defending yourself. You're surviving. That's a little bit more of the purpose of it, as opposed to desert, where you're just kind of meant to kind of help with fighting large numbers, and sea, where you're kind of designed to kind of fight one specific entity. 10th level, you gain Shielding Storm. You learn to use your mastery of the storm to protect others. Each creature of your choice has the damage resistance you gain from the Storm Soul feature while the creature is in your storm aura. Now, understand, if you have desert, the people in that aura are going to be taking damage every turn whenever you use the desert ability to deal fire damage. But, again, you'll kind of figure out where you are. This is one of those things I think was a major design flaw, where you should be able to avoid, at least at 10th level when you get Shielding Storm, to prevent your party members to get hit from your fire damage ability. Because it seems to make sense. It's Shielding Storm. It should incorporate that, where like in the beginning you don't have it, so everything around you is very dangerous to be around you. But at 10th level you learn to control and use the storm in a better way. I think that should be added on. Personally, if I'm DMing a game where someone wanted to be a Storm Herald, I would definitely put that in at level 10 if they wanted to stick through the class that far. And finally, at 14th level, you gain Raging Storm. The power of the storm you channel grows mightier, lashing out at your foes. And the effect is based on the environment you choose from your storm aura. Desert. Immediately after a creature hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to force that creature to make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes fire damage equal to half your barbarian level. When you hit a creature in your aura with an attack, you can use a reaction to force that creature to make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, the creature is knocked prone as if struck by a wave. Tundra. Whenever the effects of the storm aura is activated, you can choose one creature you can see in the aura. The creature must succeed on a strength saving throw, or its speed is reduced until 0 until the start of your next turn, as magical frost covers it. So, here's a couple of cool things to do. Desert really picks up here because how often do you realistically get the opportunity to use your reaction if you don't have the Sentinel feat? More often than not, your reaction is going to go woefully underused. You'll maybe get to use it once or twice, maybe a day, every other combat. Maybe you might get that circumstance. But in a situation where you can return damage, I think that's a pretty good benefit. Don't get me wrong, they can still make a save, and if they succeed, they don't take any damage. But if they walked up to you and they didn't do anything else, you're not using that reaction. There's just nothing in the cards for you to be able to handle any other kind of reactionary thing unless you did something to gain a reaction. In which case, you also still have to weigh the benefit of where you are. If you're fighting just one enemy, what other reactions are you really going to take? That added damage isn't really going to help you. C. When you hit a creature in your aura with an attack, you can knock them prone. This is significantly better on your first attack. If you are not using Reckless Attack, which sometimes you just shouldn't do it. Though there are very few and far between, sometimes the chances of you getting critically hit or getting hit regularly might be severely detrimental. But if you're not using it, knocking them prone by your second attack, you have advantage. So you don't have to risk gaining that advantage at hitting you. If you're comfortable enough that you can make that hit and then knock them prone, you can guarantee advantage to other people and yourself. Because if you go and then a couple of other party members go, like if you go and then a paladin goes behind you or a rogue goes behind you, that advantage might land them that huge damage roll that they've been just kind of waiting for. But that benefit comes most if you can land it on your first attack. Also, keep in mind, it doesn't say it's limited to 1 per turn. So if you hit on the first attack, it doesn't work. Oh, yep, nope, never mind. I'm sorry. Missed that. Yeah, no, it's a reaction. Still using your reaction. But it's still worth it to kind of build that sequence. Again, if you're the last person to go and then the monster goes, then you might not really need this as much. Because then the monster is just going to end up standing up and then the prone is gone. But in a situation where you're not looking to use Reckless Attack for a good reason, this might be really beneficial to you. And Tundra. So Tundra is interesting because you have to be very aware of your positioning. Because it's a 10-foot aura around you. If you're not in melee with them, those are the people you should pick. Freeze them in their space, and then handle something else. Or maybe you're using like a reach weapon, like a pike or something like that. Keep them zoned. Hit them. Hit them in an area where you don't have to be in melee combat. Keep them at a distance where they can't hurt you up close, or they have to make a decision on where to go afterwards. but they won't be able to move until the start of your next turn. So if you happen to be able to do that twice, that's pretty impressive. They can go anywhere. This works tremendously well on melee monsters if they fail that strength saving throw. But again, it is something you have to be in the right position to do. The plus side is this doesn't take your reaction. This just takes your bonus action when you're adding temporary HP onto yourself. So it's really it's a better higher level ability action economy wise, the Tundra. I still think C kind of pulls up ahead because everything with C kind of just coalesces really well. With all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. The Herald Barbarian gives you this really unique opportunity to very, very heavily invest in your bonus action and kind of give you an opportunity to think further about what your character is and kind of like the end goal, kind of where you are, and really juggle the impact of your campaign. Where every other barbarian, you just kind of drop and set and go in. This requires a little bit more thought and a little bit of creativity and a little bit of an understanding of the circumstance you're in and your party composition. In a circumstance where you're the only melee person, yeah, maybe desert might be really good for you. But dependent on a lot of factors, which requires you to really get in depth with understanding the campaign you're going into, which is something you should really take time anyway. And this is a great way to kind of prep you for that, where you should ask questions like, where are we going to be? Are we going to be in certain biomes? Are we going to go to certain planes? Is there something in there that I should be aware of, because this is the subclass I want to do, and if it's going to be ineffective in that kind of circumstance, I'd really like to know ahead of time before I invest in creating this wonderful character. Take your time, know your campaign, know your DM, and understand what kind of focus you want and how you want to make your character connected. I like the idea of going like C all the way, and building that seafaring kind of maniac that attacks wildly and causes the lightning to come down from the heavens. I think that's fun. I think being a rage monster is an interesting concept anyway. I don't often play barbarians as much as I probably should, but I do think that sometimes subclasses that on paper are not as big number developing as others kind of makes people just not want to play them because they feel like they have to hit a certain damage per round to be effective, and that's really not the case. It's really the DM's responsibility to keep the combat encounters balanced. So if you're not, as a party, doing a huge amount of damage, then the combat should be tailored to that. So that way you never feel under-challenged or over-challenged. You should always feel like your victories are well-earned. And because of that, you don't need to build super strong characters. You don't need to optimize every single thing. You just need a DM that's at the same kind of skill level for what you're trying to play. And that being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. If you made it this far, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel the way you do. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our good friends at Critical Failures. Check us out every Wednesday, 9:30. We're in a Icewind Dale campaign right now. It's a lot of fun. Check us out. I'm a player there, so you get to see me play. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.